Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of Brian's Sailing. Last week we left off, I was putting in the biggest piece of fiberglass to date that I put in on the boat, and I was working like a madman to get it laminated. Before we jump into the boat work on this episode, I wanted to show you some of the shirts that my daughter and I designed, and we have for sale on briansailing.com. Whether you own a boat, or dream of having a boat, or don't ever intend to get a boat, you can still live the dream with one of these shirts. If they sell well, we've got some more designs coming in the future too. I'm Brian. Join the adventures as I share what I learned restoring a hurricane-damaged catamaran with the dream to sail the world. So I'm recording this from my phone because all of my batteries, every single one of them, and I got a bunch of batteries, from my phone is dead. And I show up at the boat today and my battery's dead. I can't work either. I'm so tired. I killed myself getting this deck done. And I just went kind of to check on it today. I think it turned out pretty good. Made a few mistakes on it, but nothing major, nothing that can't be fixed. But you know, you see me, I'm all energetic and running through this stuff, but sometimes my battery's dead too. I'm going home. Maybe I'll work on some videos or do some welding or something. But yeah, I can't work on the boat today. But I'll be back at it probably tomorrow. All right, I couldn't just go home, so I charged up my batteries, both for my camera, and I got a second wind. I said, I gotta do something. I think it was the sun that was bothering me, being outside in the sun, and it's kind of windy. Florida weather is like the Three Little Bears. It's either two this way or two that way. It's never just right, at least for me. So anyway, but I guess it beats being freezing cold and not being able to do any of this stuff. So I decided I was going to work on the inside because the sun was just getting to me. So I just started cleaning up this section, feathering in the foam, putting a little filler in there, and cleaned up this little corner here. That was a hole all the way through. I patched it. I start putting filler so I can put some layers of glass on this. Also pulled out that board that was kind of angled here. So that's all I got done on that day. But the next day when I came out, I was ready to work again. So I started to move up to the front cabin where I just put some temporary patches on to keep the rain out. I was running out of my time off and I wanted to get this section sealed up, so I figured I'd move over to this section and get it done. When I first started the project, I had a little bit of concern. Hey, are my repairs going to be strong enough? Am I going to do a good enough job? And so part of the strategy was I just went in and kind of got everything lined up and initially bonded together, but I didn't do the finalized repair. Now that I've done quite a few, and I've also built samples and tested them, as well as ground back some of the work that I've done and checked it, I now feel like I have a high level of confidence in the exact process that I'm using is going to be strong enough and every repair is going to be solid because I've done the testing, and we're going to see some more of that testing later. The process that I follow is pretty much the same once I get that sanded back and enough feather room. Keep in mind, see how wide that is? That's like, I don't know, over a foot wide. That was a hairline crack. And so that's how much I'm feathering back so that I know that I get a good bond and it's going to be solid. The other thing that I'm going to do is when I lay the laminates underneath, I'm going to make sure that the seams aren't in the same place as the seams are here. So I'll probably go out another foot even and add additional fabric for that. Also, I'm adding extra layers, and part of that I can get away with is because the green you see there is a filling putty they used between the foam and the glass. And so I have my original patch layer that I have on there, plus I add a little bit of matting, plus I add my 2 layers. That's 2 layers of the same fabric that the factory used. Actually, it's a little bit different. The fabric that I have has some additional mat bound on it, and so it's a little bit thicker than what the factory used. But that gives me some leeway to grind off a little bit of that extra mat that's on the top when I go to ferret. I've had some interesting comments about people saying that I should use maybe one of those boards where they use Post-its to see what jobs need to be done and what doesn't. Maybe I'll try something like that, but right now, a lot of this stuff is just kind of an agile process that I use in my head to figure out what I should do. And part of that was, like I talk about, where I've kind of gone through and done the whole boat initially of getting it all lined up and then coming back and finishing it once I'm more comfortable with that. And part of that is because I'm just gaining skill. I'm improving my ability to do it the more that I do. And then what that allows is, because I don't finish it completely, if I find something that I felt like I didn't do a good enough job on initially, I can go back in and add additional layers or grind it back and fix it. And so that's what I do for a lot of these pieces here. And like even this little section there, I wasn't quite comfortable with it, so I add additional layers, and I've kind of got the plan down, and it works pretty well. One of the things that I found is it's actually excellent motivation to be creating these YouTube videos, because sometimes I get discouraged and I'm like, oh, I'm just not progressing very fast. The boat's just not getting done at a very fast rate. But then I'll go back and I actually watched some of my previous episodes and some of the earlier footage that I have, and I'm like, well, I actually have done quite a bit on the boat. And so that's one of the things, if you're doing a project, even just documenting your progress really helps to keep you encouraged and keep you going along. One thing's for sure, doing things in this size are much easier than when I had to do that giant laminate on the side. I think about this point in the project, I've gone through almost 10, maybe 10 or 11 gallons of resin. And so it takes me about that long to get comfortable, but I'm actually pretty comfortable working with the vinyl ester now. I kind of know when it's going to kick and how it's going to set up and what my plan is and how to laminate it. And so that's kind of the learning curve. I think it took me about that long. And so now when I'm doing this and I'm doing the final stages, it turns out like I want it to. This project here, where I'm basically fixing this area to put the fiberglass on, to fair it, do all the putty and everything, I think it took me about, it was either 1.5 days or 2.5 days to get this all complete. A lot of it is fairing though. Getting the laminate on is actually the easy part. Or I shouldn't say the easy part, but certainly the less time-consuming part. It's very time-consuming to ferret, and you don't really need to. It depends all on aesthetics. Because sometimes even an ugly repair can be stronger than a nice-looking repair because there's more glass on it. But if you want it to look back to factory and want it to look good, then it just takes a long time to get it to fair. And some people are better at it and have more practice, and so it takes me a while. But a lot of it is just sanding away. Another helpful tip is when you're fairing is you'll notice that you'll see me check it with my hands a lot. Your hands are actually better than your eyes a lot of times to check if something is smooth. And so I'll sand for a while and then I'll check it with my hands. So here we see after I've first laid the glass down and roll it out, and sometimes I get this is from that, but basically what happens is I squeegee the excess resin out, and then that excess resin ends up on the outsides, which I gotta sand off, which is a pain. And then here I've got the it's a pretty big step because I can't really layer the glass because it's only 2 layers. And so what I come back down and feather it. So this is what you can see as I've started to feather this. And one of the things when you feather it, you can really see the different layers. And so I watch the different layers of, like, here where I'm into the mat, here it's the biaxial, and then maybe right here where it's really thin, where I'm trying to get that layer super thin, you've got the unidirectional. So I've got the unidirectional, the biaxial, and the mat as it feathers across. And so it just puts the different layers up. Takes a lot of time, but I fair those edges until basically it's back to the gel coat, so it's flush with the gel coat, not with the gel coat without the texture. And so like this area here has a little more to go still, and then it's going to be flat, and I'll fair it. You want to use a straight board to get everything fair first. If you sand with the other sander, especially this, you'll just sand waves in it and you'll be able to see this in a heartbeat. So the key is to make this totally hidden so you can't even see that it was the repair. It's about making it perfectly flat with this, and then when I get it close, I'll come back and fair. And I can do a little bit, like filling this area here with a little fairing putty is fine, because I mean that's just like millimeters thick. Probably a millimeter thick, not millimeters, or less than a millimeter. So yeah. So once I have it laid, I'll start with some rough sanding, clean up the edges with my little sander. And then after I've cleaned up the edges and spots where I've got excess resin that's easy to grind away, then I'll move into my flat sander so that I can sand everything flat and get a nice feather through everything. I just finished getting this all sanded flat. Took a good part of the day, most of the day. I got it all sanded flat, and then I just applied the first layer of filler. So once that kicks off, I'll sand it back and should be ready for some gel coat by the end of the day. I worked late last night trying to get this all fair. Had a little bit more to do this morning. That is ready for gel coat. It's not perfect, but I'll figure out what I want to do when it comes to the non-skid. For now, this is good. Doing this. It's dry. Let's grind it down. So check out my compressor. I think I was overheating it. It keeps up with the air sander, but it gets kind of hot. So yeah, so just put a box fan on top of it. A little extra cooling. It seems to work actually pretty well. I have found doing the fairing seems to be one of the longest parts of this job, and it just keeps sanding and sanding. Check it. Sanding. Check it again. And sanding. And then finally, once you have it smooth, you can bring in the rotary sander. And I'll run this in DA mode. It has two different modes on the sander, but I'll run it in DA mode. And I'm just kind of smoothing it out and pick up any feathered edges. This is smooth enough to be, almost smooth enough to be body work on a car. So, we'll see. I probably would have spent a bit more time if I was doing a car, but should be good enough. We'll see how it turns out, and I'm not even sure how much I need to do because I'm not sure what I'm going to do for putting the non-skid back on. Well, done for today. Got my protective layer of gel coat on. All that is some people commenting that it's not good to expose the resin to UV for a long period of time, and that's very true. So I just stick a little gel coat on this, and then I'll sand it back when I paint it, and I'll do the texture when I retexture the deck. Haven't figured out what to do with that yet, but I know you can make patterns from this, and I can reset the pattern on that, so I might do that. I might just grind it off and do a different type of non-skid. I haven't decided yet. I finally finished the second round of testing on the samples that I created because the first test was a little bit inconclusive with the epoxy that I was using. And so I'm going to next episode share those and take a look, and you'll be able to see exactly how it turns out. Also, don't forget, go and order a t-shirt from my new website, briansailing.com. And also, you can follow me on Instagram, briansailing.com. Thanks again to all my Patreons. And if you want to be a Patreon, I'd love it. It's going to help me produce better videos and videos more often. And that's Patreon/briansailing. Thanks a lot, and see you next time.